Hi, guys. So I'm here to talk about the practical applications of virtual reality. The reason I'm doing this is because I think there's a very large focus on gaming and entertainment platforms. And as you can see over there at our booth at Smack It Ball, I really do care about entertainment. But VR is so much more than that. There's a lot of ways that VR can help people. And there's a lot of different methods you can use, and there's a lot of ways you can do it responsibly, and there's ways that can get out of hand. So without further ado, let's start talking about it. So virtual reality, what are the reasons why you'd want to use virtual reality as opposed to other solutions? One is that it provides immersion, which is different from a lot of the methods that you'd use for other things, such as using drugs or talk therapy, depending on what you're doing. In addition to that, it's nearly impossible for you to be distracted from anything outside of VR. So once you're in virtual reality, it's very difficult for anything outside of the virtual space to affect you in any way, positive or negative. But in addition to that, distraction from anything outside of VR is beneficial because let's say there's something outside of VR like pain that you don't want to experience. You can use VR to escape that. And the other benefit is that it's very analogous to the real world compared to 2D graphics that we're used to. So a lot of other solutions in the past have used boxes that are 2D, and you look at those and you try to use that to interact with the world, and that's nothing like what VR is. VR is very similar to the way you would interact naturally in the real world. So that's the other benefit to it. So using VR for therapy. There's a lot of ways that you can use it for therapy, and it depends what kind of therapy you're looking at. If you're talking about physical therapy, or for example, let me give you a good one that I really like. The HIT Lab, which is based out of the University of Washington, is the Human Interface Technologies Lab, and they've been doing research for over a decade on how to use virtual reality to help burn victims. And burn victims have to go through this very painful therapy in which their skin gets stretched out, and they have to do that very often so that their skin doesn't calcify and harden. It's a very painful and invasive treatment, and it's not very comfortable to go through. So what they designed is this game called Snow World, which you guys can see over here, and it looks like I ripped it straight out of 1991, and this is what they currently use for burn victims. And as you guys can see, that it's not very immersive, it looks very cartoony, but it works. What they found is that whether you have a light amount of pain, a medium amount of pain, or a lot of pain, it ends up reducing the amount of pain you feel by over 50%. Which is a very statistically significant gain that even drugs weren't able to do in the past. As you guys can see here, if you can go back for a second. As you guys can see here, this would be the burn victim over here, and he'd be in this virtual reality system. That's a very, very old school and expensive HMD. The resolution's very low, and there's no decent head tracking. There's a very small amount. And as you guys can see there, he's interacting with it using a joystick, which is not a very natural way to interact with it. And up there you can see that that's how the game works. You throw these snowballs, and you do that by pressing a trigger. Now, even this alone can reduce the pain by over 50%. So, as you guys can see, it can be very statistically significant. But how about if you could make it look like the bottom picture? What if you could make it feel like you're actually in an icy forest while you're getting these burn treatments? Then, that could push the pain reduction even further. The different treatments, the benefits of it, as you can see, this is what the actual treatment looks like. This is the other side of the picture when they're dealing with actually cutting off parts of the skin or stretching it. And like as you guys can tell, it's very painful. The victims that report the pain experience over 50% less. And there's other benefits to it too. The use costs are significantly cheaper than the other options they'd use. It's basically just electricity and sanitization costs. And that's all you have to pay for to use this. So it's a one-time expensive setup fee, but after that, it costs almost nothing every single time you want to use it with other patients. And the areas that we have for growth here are the fact that it's very low resolution, it's low interaction, and those two together cause low immersion. So the more immersive we can make it with the newer technologies, these are things that can really, really help people and increase the amount of statistical gains we get with any type of treatment that we're doing. The other type of treatment is mental health. So phobias have been examined and researched extensively with virtual reality. Phobias are something that have been very difficult to treat because they're irrational fears. So talk therapy doesn't work really well because you can talk to someone about their fear forever, but it's not the same as them facing their fear. VR is really cool because it really puts you face to face with it and allows you to gear the situation to the person who's receiving it. So there's a lot of reasons VR is better. Firstly, why do we want to use VR in the first place? Well, over 11% of the population has phobias, and 4% of the population is arachnophobic. And they found that between 8 and 12 sessions of arachnophobia therapy works with almost every single person who's arachnophobic. Now, 15 is kind of the amount of sessions necessary at the very, very high end. And at best, a single session is all that it takes to get you over your phobia. So this is something that has not been able to be found with drugs. And if you use drugs in addition to virtual reality, the gains are even better. So training and education. So this is a field that a lot of people haven't been looking at. But one of the areas that it has been explored significantly is in the Army and the Marines and other branches of the U.S. government. So thank you, U.S. government, for doing this. They've been training soldiers for years in virtual reality, and it seems to really work. There's a lot of different things that you can look at and the different types of jobs that you can get people in and train them. The reasons it's better is it allows you to interact naturally. So before, when they try to switch to high-tech training for jobs, what they do is they take someone and they put them in front of a computer and they ask them multiple choice questions. Now, that might maybe test their knowledge about the subject, but that's not the same as doing the job at all. That's just asking questions. What VR would allow you to do is actually put you through the steps of the job and really train you in a way that kinesthetically activates your body so that you'll really learn what the skill is. The process can also be totally standardized as opposed to having a trainer, because the trainer would teach it differently every single time. Virtual reality can be standardized so every single employee has the exact same experience. And you also get significantly more data when you do it this way. So for example, if you want to see, let's say you're training a cook and you want to see how well the cook is cutting things, you can actually get the data on how they were cutting and see if you can help improve their form, as opposed to before, where if you don't catch them messing up, they can use that mistake for months and months before you pick up on it. So you get way more data when you train people in VR as well. Another market that hasn't really been tapped is real estate. Some real estate companies are jumping on this, but showing off virtual spaces in VR is very, very interesting and very helpful. A lot of the tools that people already use for creating buildings and real estate and stuff like that, like CAD files can easily be converted into a format that will work with virtual reality, and you can just walk around these spaces that are created by the architects. This is really beneficial if you want to sell a space or if you want to just see the space and how it would look. There's sometimes things that you can't tell on a 2D monitor that once you're inside of it and you can sense the scale, you'll notice things are off, or that you could tweak things to make them better. So in real estate, that's a really good place that we could try to use VR. Remote work is another really interesting thing. Today, remote work is basically reserved for any job that you can just do behind a computer and a web browser. Now that's very cool, but in the future, we don't have to be limited by that. Especially once robotics gets a little bit more advanced, being able to remotely connect to an avatar that's in a workplace. We could even have robot chefs that are logging in from their vacation house in Bali and cooking up your food in the kitchen of the local Seattle restaurant. So even though that's definitely looking towards the future, remote work is something that can definitely be used and is very beneficial. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is, of course, the implications. VR has the benefit that it can really help the world. If you do things properly, if you're responsible with what you're doing, you can really help people, and you can create new products, new ideas that can just change the paradigms of how people do things in different workplaces. However, there's also downsides to it. People can get sucked into it. People can use the entertainment aspects of it and just get lost in their own world, separate themselves from their friends. So I just implore you guys, use VR responsibly. It's a very powerful tool and it can help the world, or you can use it to ruin people's lives. So yeah, be sure you deal with it responsibly. And then finally, just a few of the citations that I used and the different groups that I got some of the information from. There's, of course, the HIT lab that's at UW. The Human Interface Technology Lab is really, really good, and they've been doing research for decades on VR. So I recommend if you guys want to donate anything to something VR related, these are definitely the guys to do it. Underneath that, we got VR Phobia. These guys have been dealing with creating products that can help deal with phobias for a very long time. They've been taking virtual reality seriously for a while. They've got a lot of really good information if you guys want to check that out. And then finally, VRS.org is a UK-based company that has a bunch of different simulations for the US government and other governments that they sell that are VR-based, and has a lot of interesting information. So if you guys are interested in that, go check it out. But yeah, that's how you can use VR. Any questions? All right, great. Thank you guys so much.